They weren't heroes, they weren't legends. They were criminals who built something the world around them couldn't. A system, a code, a form of justice stronger than the empires trying to hang them. Boston Harbor, 1724. Cold wind cuts through the crowd. The smell of salt mixed with fear. A wooden platform creaks under weight. A rope swings gently in the air. Below it stands a man, not shaking, not crying, watching. His name was William Fly, a pirate, a mutineer, a dead man walking. The crowd expected a performance, a confession, a breakdown, a final apology to God. But Fly? He looked at the hangman and calmly said, "You're tying that wrong." For a moment's silence, even the waves seemed to stop. Then he stepped forward, adjusted the rope himself, and showed the man how to tie a proper noose. Think about that. A man seconds away from death, correcting his own execution, not out of madness, but out of belief. Because in his mind, this wasn't chaos, this was order. For 300 years, history has told us the same story. Pirates were savage, lawless, violent animals of the sea, men who rejected rules, men who lived only for chaos. But that version of history, it's incomplete, because hidden beneath the violence was something no one expected. Structure, discipline, and a system more fair than the world they escaped. To understand pirates, you have to understand the world they came from, because pirates weren't born in chaos, they were created by it. Imagine this: you're a sailor in the early 1700s, no choice, no contract. You were taken, forced into service, press ganged off the streets, or dragged from your home. Now you belong to the Royal Navy, not as a man, but as property. You wake up in darkness, not a room, a cramped wooden box. Hammocks stacked so close, you can feel another man breathing against your face. Food, rotten biscuits, infested with worms. Water, stale, sometimes green. And discipline, brutal. One mistake, one word, one wrong look, and you're whipped. Publicly, until your back tears open. Officers live above you. They eat fresh food, drink clean water, sleep in comfort. You survive, barely. And if you're injured, lose a limb in battle, there is no reward, no compensation, no honor. You're thrown away, left to beg on the streets, forgotten. Now imagine this. One night, the ship goes quiet. Whispers spread. A plan forms. Not rebellion, not revenge, escape. A mutiny, fast, violent, decisive. The captain falls, the officers are overpowered, and for the first time, the ship belongs to the men who run it. That moment, that single moment, is where piracy begins. But here's the problem. You now have 30, 50, maybe 100 men, all armed, all desperate, all dangerous. No king, no law, no authority. What happens next? Chaos? Bloodshed? A slow collapse? That's what history expects. But that's not what happened. Instead, they did something no one saw coming. One of the earliest known codes belonged to Bartholomew the Portuguese, a pirate operating near Brazil. After a brutal escape from captivity, after surviving torture, after watching men die around him, he realized something. Survival isn't enough. You need order. So he wrote it down. A set of rules, not suggestions, not guidelines, laws, rules that governed combat, behavior, loyalty, reward. A framework that turned chaos into structure, and it worked. Think about what that means. Men who rejected society's laws created their own, not weaker, not random, stronger, because these laws weren't forced, they were chosen. And that changes everything. Every man had a vote, not just officers, not just leaders, everyone. When a ship appeared on the horizon, attack or let it go, they voted. When treasure was captured, how to divide it, they voted. Even the captain was not chosen by birth, not by power, by election. And if he failed, if he became greedy, or weak, or cruel, they removed him. No king, no throne, only trust. While pirates were voting, kings ruled by divine right. While pirates shared wealth, empires hoarded it. While pirates built systems of fairness, navies ruled through fear. And that's the irony. The criminals were more organized than the civilizations hunting them, and this was only the beginning. Because the deeper you go into the pirate code, the darker it gets. The punishments, the betrayals, the rules that decided who lived and who was left to die alone on an island. In part 2, we break down the actual laws, the punishments, and the brutal system that kept pirates alive. Them. And if you broke them, you didn't get a warning, you disappeared. A pirate ship wasn't chaos, it was a floating society. Every man knew what he would earn, what he was allowed to do, and exactly what would happen if he crossed the line. Because out there, in the middle of the ocean, there were no second chances. Every man had an equal vote. Not almost equal, not depending on rank, equal. The newest recruit had the same voice as the captain himself. Think about that. In a world where kings ruled nations, a criminal ship gave power to the lowest man. But equality came with a price, responsibility. If the ship failed, it wasn't the captain's fault, it was everyone's. Food, water, rum, everything taken from captured ships was shared. No secret hoarding, no hidden stash. Because the moment one man takes more, trust breaks. And when trust breaks, the ship dies. Scarcity changed everything. If supplies ran low, the crew voted who gets less, who sacrifices. Because survival wasn't individual, it was collective. At first, this sounds strange. Why would pirates ban gambling? Because gambling creates something deadly. Winners and losers become desperate. Desperate men start stealing, start fighting, start breaking the code. So pirates removed the problem entirely. No cards, no dice, no internal chaos. Every weapon had to be clean, sharp, ready. Because death didn't send warnings. A rusty blade, a misfired pistol could mean the entire crew dies. So inspections were constant, daily, strict. And if you failed, you didn't get punished with pain. You lost your share. Because nothing hurt more than losing what you fought for. This rule was absolute. No women, no exceptions. Not because pirates were moral, because they understood human nature. Jealousy, competition, favoritism. One woman on board could divide the crew, turn allies into enemies. So the punishment? Death. Or worse, marooning, left alone on an empty island with a pistol, one bullet, a bottle of water, and time to decide how you die. Marooning, picture it, you stand on sand, ship disappearing on the horizon, no sound, no help, no escape. The pistol in your hand? Not for survival, for mercy. Because when the water runs out, when the sun burns your skin, when hunger turns into madness, you'll understand why pirates feared this more than death. Running away during battle, abandoning your post, that wasn't weakness, that was betrayal. And betrayal had only two outcomes, death or exile. But here's the twist. The captain didn't decide. The crew voted. Justice wasn't personal, it was collective. Even pirates needed something human. Music, ships had official musicians, fiddlers, drummers, men who kept morale alive. And they had rights. 1 day of rest per week. Guaranteed. Think about that. Pirates gave workers more rest than most navies. This was the most powerful rule. If you were injured, you were paid. Lose a limb, you get compensated. Lose an eye, paid. Lose your ability to work, still paid. Before anyone touched the treasure, the injured got their share first. Compare that to the real world. A Navy sailor loses his leg, he's abandoned, forgotten. But a pirate, he could retire. That's why men joined, not for chaos, for fairness. Conflicts were inevitable, Men argued, men hated each other, but violence not allowed on board, because one fight could destroy unity, so disputes were settled on land, formal duels, controlled. Until then, you worked together, even with your enemy. Article 10, Division of Treasure. This is where everything becomes clear. The system was transparent. Everyone knew what they would earn. Captain, 2 shares. Officers, 1.5 shares. Crew, 1 share. No secrets, no corruption, no manipulation. When treasure came in, everyone could count. Everyone could verify. And that created something rare. Trust in the system. At night, lights were extinguished, not for discipline, for survival. One spark, one accident, and the entire ship burns. Gunpowder, wood, fire, that's all it takes. Now step back. Look at the full picture. A group of violent, desperate men in the most dangerous place on earth, and somehow they created order. Why? Because they had no choice. Without rules, they fight, they steal, they destroy each other. With rules, they survive. The pirate code wasn't about morality. It wasn't about being good. It was about control. Control over chaos. Control over human nature. Control over fear. But rules alone weren't enough. Because rules need consequences. And pirate consequences were brutal. Executions, betrayals, votes that decided life or death. In part 3, we go deeper into trials, punishments, and the moment when democracy turns deadly. Because the same system that gave pirates freedom also gave them the power to destroy each other. Rules gave pirates order, but rules alone aren't enough, because every system eventually faces betrayal, and when pirates were betrayed, they didn't forgive. There were no courts, no judges, no lawyers, only a deck, a circle of men, and a decision that could end your life. A pirate accused of breaking the code would stand in the center, surrounded, watched, judged. He could speak, defend himself, explain. But in the end, his fate was never in his hands. It belonged to the crew. Every man raised his hand, guilty or not, and that was it. No appeals, no delays. Democracy at its most brutal form. Because when survival depends on trust, even a small betrayal feels like a death sentence. Punishment wasn't symbolic, it was final. Hanging, the most common, a rope, a mast, a body swinging against the sky, slow, public. A warning to everyone watching, shooting, cleaner, faster, a line of men, a single command, and silence, marooning, worse than death, left alone, on an empty island with one pistol, one shot, limited water, and a choice: die slowly or end it yourself. Most didn't last weeks, some didn't last days. One case changed everything. A pirate named Thomas Annis was caught stealing, not treasure, not gold, just a few coins, small enough that in another world it wouldn't matter. But on a pirate ship, theft destroys trust, and without trust, everyone dies. Annis stood before the crew, silent, surrounded. The verdict: guilty. The punishment: death. Simple, final, unquestioned. But then, something unexpected happened. Annis spoke, not to beg, not to escape, but to explain. He had a mother, sick, dying. He needed money for medicine. For one letter. He didn't steal for greed. He stole for survival. The crew hesitated. For the first time, the system paused. Because now this wasn't just about rules. It was about judgment. They debated for hours. Some demanded punishment, others mercy. And then they voted again. Guilty, but not death. Instead, 30 lashes, loss of future shares, money returned, and something unexpected. The crew sent money to his mother. This wasn't kindness. This wasn't weakness. This was controlled justice. A system strong enough to punish, but flexible enough to understand, something most empires couldn't do. But don't mistake this for compassion, because fear was always present. Every pirate knew one mistake, one bad decision, and you could be next. That fear kept the system alive. Even captains weren't safe. If a captain ignored the code, made decisions alone, abused power, he was removed, sometimes violently, sometimes permanently, because no one was above the system. One captain made a mistake. He showed mercy without asking the crew. A decision made alone. That was enough. The crew turned on him, voted him up, left him behind. Because even leaders served the code. Think about that. A world where power comes from the people, rules apply equally, justice is immediate, but also a world where one vote can end your life. This was the flaw. Democracy without protection becomes dangerous because the same system that protects you can destroy you. Pirates proved something terrifying. You don't need kings to create order, but you also don't need kings to create cruelty. And this system, as powerful as it was, couldn't last forever. Because eventually, the outside world caught up, navies grew stronger, hunts became organized, pirates started falling. In part 4, we see the collapse, the end of piracy, and the one idea that refused to die. Because even after the ships sank and the pirates vanished, their system didn't. Empires hunted them, navies chased them, governments wanted them erased, and one by one, but something they created refused to die. By the early 1700s, the world had changed. The oceans were no longer free. Naval patrols increased. Warships became faster. Merchant ships traveled in protected convoys. Pirates were no longer predators. They became targets. The same seas that once gave them freedom now trapped them. Ports turned hostile. Governors offered pardons or executions, and slowly the brotherhood of pirates began to collapse. Ships were captured, crews were hanged. Names that once ruled the ocean became warnings. The great pirate captains fell, not in legend, but in reality. Some died in battle, some were betrayed, some stood where William Fly once stood, beneath a rope. And just like that, their stories ended. But their system? That's where things change. Pirate codes were never meant to last. They weren't written in books, not protected in laws. They lived inside crews, inside men. And when those men died, the codes died with them. Some were burned, some were forgotten, some were never written at all. But not every pirate died. Some accepted pardons, some walked away, some disappeared into cities, becoming invisible. Dock workers, sailors, tavern owners, ordinary men carrying something extraordinary. An idea. The idea that power doesn't have to come from kings, that rules can be created by the people, that fairness isn't given, it's built. These men took that idea from the ocean to the land. No battles, no announcements, just whispers in taverns, in ports, in shipyards, men talking, questioning, wondering, why can't we have this here? Years passed, decades, and slowly those same ideas began to appear again. Not on ships, but in nations. Documents were written, systems were created. Concepts like equal rights, voting power, fair distribution. The same principles pirates used to survive. Now think about this. The men who created these ideas weren't kings, weren't scholars, weren't leaders. They were criminals, outcasts, men rejected by society, and yet they built something that worked. Pirates were brutal, violent, ruthless, but inside that chaos, they created order. Not perfect, not pure, but real. Because here's the truth no one talks about. Justice doesn't come from civilization, it comes from people who demand it. Even the worst of men, when forced into survival, will create systems of fairness not because they're good, but because they have to be. The ships are gone, the flags have fallen, the ocean is silent again. But somewhere, in every system we live under today, there's a trace of them, a shadow, a memory, of men who stood against the world and built something of their own. They weren't heroes, they weren't legends, but they proved something the world couldn't ignore. Even in chaos, humans will always try. to create order. If you want more stories like this, the hidden systems, the dark truths, the realities no one tells you, subscribe, because the next story might change the way you see history again.